This is the weekly wrap up presented by the Conversation Project, and I am Jay Cleveland Payne. This is simply a wrap up of news stories we posted all week long on the Conversation Project's feed on Facebook and Twitter, or call it X if you will. And we talked about most of these stories throughout the week in our daily session of news updates called Things You Might Not Have Heard. Here, you get the full details as per your your engagement for the stories. On the daily show, we give a little bit of perspective and move things around so it fits the daily narrative. This is purely the single engagement stories you have of the top 10 stories of your choosing. And we also give you a bit of perspective. The almost rans are the ones that almost ran in the top 10, 11 through 15, and the story that got no love whatsoever. That story at number 217 this week. Nobody seemed to care for it. These usually are stories that should get more love, but just got lost in the shuffle. We'll talk about that when we get towards the end of the show. So stay tuned for that as well. We'll explain deeper in detail how the feeds work, how you can engage with us, and how you can help things go forward in the Conversation Project in just a bit. But right now, let's prepare for the top 10 stories of the week that you gave us to talk about. Oh, by the way, along with this podcast here, which supplements the daily thing, which is, of course, things you might have heard, we have a supplement to this supplemental podcast. We'll explain that in a moment, called the Story of the Week. We'll talk about one of the top 10 stories in greater detail. This week, we're doing a bit of a swerve because I'm sort of feeling it, and we're actually combining two stories, but we'll get to that explanation in a bit. What you want right now are the top 10 stories that you said were most important. Let's do them. Counting down Casey Kasem style from 10 to 1. Let's get it with story number 10. U.S. monitoring large Serbian force along Kosovo border, White House says. This was kind of a smaller story with a little bit of extra pumper to it, where the U.S. was monitoring a kind of a beef that's happening around the border of Kosovo, where some authorities said there were issues where forces were sort of convalescing, and in various places the Serbian military was seeing a lot of things happening, monitoring some troubling history between the border at Kosovo where things are usually bad. Nothing seemingly happened from there, but there was a case where some heavily stormed Serbs stormed the village and barricaded themselves in the Serbian Orthodox monastery, killing 3 attackers, 1 police officer in the issue. This did not escalate to anything of any import, if you will, so we did not have another surge of things going on in Serbia or Kosovo to deal with. But it was something that an eye was kept on, and we actually talked about this inside of the Daily Show and the number 10 story, because your engagement for this week. Posted way on Saturday, the 30th of September. So this was one that had enough eyeballs on it to keep it in the running for the full week. Let's move on to the story that's listed at the number 9 part. And we actually talked about this guy in the teaser graphic. MyPillow lawyers say CEO Mike Lindell owes them millions of dollars. What does that mean? Well, Mike Lindell's lawyers, the MyPillow guy's lawyers, say that he's behind on paying his lawyers. He's behind on paying them the money to defend him in all the court cases he has going on. And what that eventually means is they're going to have to stop working for him fairly soon, if not already by now. This story was posted later, or actually yesterday, as we recorded this on Saturday morning. So this is something that was posted on Friday, early Friday, and got some mention to this. But we're going to find out more about Mike Lindell and how he's going to survive this one, if he survives this one. Of course, he is the guy who started My Pillow company with a great story about being a drug addict and alcoholic, making this company, bringing in Americans and bringing big jobs. And then he backed Donald Trump so well that he decided to pay for a whole lot of the testimony, a whole lot of the work behind the scenes to show that he actually won the presidency. And of course, if you kind of live on this side of reality, you know he didn't. And Mike Lindell is still sticking to his guns and spending all his money in this case just to not have to say he's wrong. And at this point, his lawyers are going to have to stop saying he's wrong for him because he can't pay them. The next story at number 8 this week. This is one that popped up as a really strong story, posted on Thursday, and was pretty big detail that we could have did for the things you might have heard on Friday. We talked about it, but didn't go deep in detail. This is a story we think was going to be something we'll talk about come Monday, so we'll have more details in this in a greater patch for that Daily Show. Right now, for this week, you said it had enough juice in the late week to make it to the top 10. Headline, Jason Derulo signed hopeful singer to a deal, then expected sex, she alleges in lawsuit. This being Amaza Gibson, who says she had a record deal with Jason Derulo, and it came with some strings attached and some struggles that she didn't want to deal with. allegedly being said there would be some sex acts in the actual deal to make sure that she got her deal and got a chance to record. This is a lawsuit, so there'll be more talk back and forth between lawyers to really work through this thing, and this is going to go on for a while. Now, Jason Derulo has been making a lot of waves, popular waves, in music and in life with his new autobiography that came out a few months ago, where he talked about being positive and things like that, making a great standing on him and his actual profile. The problem now is him and his actual profile may take a hit from this lawsuit, whether he's found guilty or innocent. So essentially, the lawsuit's out there. So the thought's out there in people's minds that there's an issue, whether the issue is true or not. At number 7, and we're surprised it didn't make it up to the top 5, but number 7 is one of the top stories we had about Kevin McCarthy this week. We had a lot of Kevin McCarthy, being threatened, what he was doing, the deal he made to not shut the government down last weekend. By Monday, basically Tuesday, when we posted the story, Kevin McCarthy was ousted as Speaker. This headline has throwing Washington into chaos. And the chaos continues through now as the House has essentially left. Technically, they've not adjourned, so when they come back in about a week, it'll still be Tuesday the 3rd, or maybe still Monday the 2nd of October, because they can't gavel out the session because there's nobody technically in charge. There's a Speaker, designate, but he can't do anything without the permission of the Senate technically, and nobody's basically asked them, as they're just kind of like, dudes, y'all did this thing. What happened? Matt Gaetz triggered the poison pill to oust Kevin McCarthy, and it didn't seem like he had the actual juice to do that, because you need a majority of people to vote for it, since very little, that being no Democrats that showed up to vote, all voted against Kevin McCarthy, as it did in the first time. They just needed basically 5 votes to overturn his speakership and make it null and void. 8 people voted on the Republican side. All those 8 people are now being sort of poked at, because the other Republicans are saying these folks are bad, and the other Republicans are all saying Matt Gaetz is bad, but they allowed this to happen. It is what happened, because they had that power. Gaetz didn't know he had the power. Now we're looking at not a chance where the dog has actually caught the car. The car actually stopped, and the dog just ran in the back of it because it didn't know what to do going forward. We don't know what to do going forward. We literally have a crisis where there's no speaker and there's no one to actually do anything. And we're about, 5, 6, 7 days past the 45 days they extended for the debt limit ceiling that's happening in November. That can't be dealt with. Nothing can be dealt with. Kosovo can't be dealt with. Serbia can't be dealt with. Ukraine can't be dealt with. Domestic stuff can't be dealt with, because we don't have no speaker to run the House. At number 6, Iranian police deny claim that officers assaulted teen girl over her job. Amidia Gervlevon, who is a student, was hospitalized in Tehran after she was allegedly encountered by a police officer. She is still in a coma, according to human rights observers. And what they have on closed circuit TV is security footage of Metro Station and Tehran police dealing with the young lady. Here's what essentially is being told, and here was what we're being told by Tehran. The young lady was traveling without a headscarf. We already know there is issues about that in Iran, and police are sort of, morality police specifically, are being kind of, let's say, pushy about it. Because they're literally pushing people into medical situations about these things. A lady lost her life about a year ago, and there was protests for that, and now we're looking at a situation that's similar. However, the Iranian police deny that they actually touched the student and anything actually happened. Obviously, she's in the hospital for something, and she was not probably wearing her headscarf. So you can put 2 and 2 together on your own and figure out how that plays out. This is a story that is developing. It is going forward, and we are still keeping eyes on this story. As you want to engage in it, we will engage with it as well. At number 5, Dick Butkus, the Hall of Fame linebacker and Bears legend, dies at the age of 80. This is a story we pulled from the NFL Network's website. So this is essentially a press release that is all the life of Dick Butkus. It's not really written so much as an article. It is just a release of what happened. I'm going to read you some pieces of this, and that's why it's going to sound very formal. And it is all basically Chicago Bears specific, although he played his full career at Chicago, basically his whole career in Illinois. We'll get to that in the reading. Dick was the ultimate Bear and one of the greatest players in NFL history, said Bear chairman George H. McCaskey. He refused to accept anything less than the best from himself or from his teammates. Dick had a gruff manner, but a soft touch and a legacy of philanthropy that will live forever. He'll be able to be he was able to be at the home opener this season to celebrate with the fans at the beginning of the season. Born in Chicago, played his entire football career in the state of Illinois, and a 5-time first team Pro Bowl selection and 8-time Pro Bowl honoree. He also kicked some points and he ran back a few kickoffs here or there. He played his total history in Illinois. 9 seasons with the Bears because of knees. He actually had to stop playing, but he has a big legacy going on that, being a man who actually established and mentored folks like Mike Singletary and Brian Urlacher and those guys who were future Bears coming forward. It was a loss for many that was shocking to see, although people at the age of 80 is not as shocking as you think. Was not in bad health as far as anyone knew, but him being a presence in Chicago locker rooms and Chicago media, the Bears itself, is going to be a loss going forward. The Bears actually got their first win this week as they were basically celebrating his life and legacy on the road, but it happened, and they got that to sort of propel themselves forward. Whether to wear a patch or have something memorial thing for the rest of the season, that's not been said yet, but we will see as the weekend comes through and more, very more honors for Dick Butkus come around for this man. The story at number 4 brings to light Ann Coulter as a person who still exists and may not be as relevant as she used to be. Well, why she was so relevant, some may question, but she is trying to make her way back by saying the right things to the wrong people. Here's the headline. Ann Coulter compared Republicans wanting former President Trump back in office to an abused spouse making excuses for their partner in a podcast interview. Ann Coulter did an interview with a podcaster and entrepreneur and video guy, Patrick Bet-David, who has a sort of his own sort of baggage behind it, if you will, and essentially did the talk about Donald Trump and called the Republicans who still want Trump to be in office, still want Trump to run things, essentially acting like battered women, supporting Trump in the 2024 election. It's one of those things where she's trying to. We brought up Ann Coulter a few times before, as she was one of the staunch cheerleaders for him going into the race in 2016, and then after the aftermath, realized that he wasn't so great and that her actual cachet wasn't so great either. So she went the contrarian view to try to basically gain some love and respect back from the people who on the Republican side weren't not dealing with Trump, essentially becoming a never Trumper after the fact. She's saying these things now. They mean very little now, but it is what it is. She's saying what she's saying. And some people on the left and some people on the progressive side are happy that she's, found the light after all these years of being a spawn of darkness. And some are saying, why is she speaking now? Why do we care? And speaking of that, that falls directly into the story at number 3. They are very simpatico. This headline reads, interviewing Biden, quote, the saddest thing as he couldn't finish his sentences. That's a double quote there from ex-ESPN host Sage Steele. Sage Steele was on a podcast. She was hanging out with Bill Maher on his podcast and talking about things in life after ESPN and how she's becoming sort of a darling of Republicans and conservatives. That was part of the conversation. Not specifically for this point, but she talked about her highlights during ESPN and what she's doing now. And she talked what should have been a highlight interview for her was doing an interview with President Biden. And she said it was torture. It was hell. The saddest thing she's ever done because Biden just couldn't finish his sentences properly the way he was talking, the way he was answering. He just was not there. So she's also piling on the Biden not there, feeble old man sort of thing. And of course, Bill Maher has his issues. And so he's got his background as well. But Sage Steele becoming a larger voice for people on the conservative movement, even though she doesn't do straight news per se. She did sports all this time. To speak what she says. She had issues with the vaccines and issues with the way the policies that ESPN had, which is a part of why she is no longer at ESPN. Some other tempers behind the scenes may have flared as well. And so because she had that defiant knowledge, defiant impact of just being that way, the Republicans are falling in love with her. They want her to run for Congress. We don't know if she's qualified, but she's got the age stuff. So that's out there. A very happy ending to this story. The headline reads, Charlotte Sena, 9-year-old girl feared to have been abducted, found alive. suspect in custody. There have been more stories about the suspect in custody, and we've had covered those. And we'll talk more about this as we continue to post those in the feeds for you to engage in going forward. The basis of the story is about 18 hours after being listed as missing, Charlotte Cena was found in a home near the Moreau Lake State Park where she was traveling. She was biking with some friends, decided to take another ride by herself, and then he found her bike a few hours later. The individual, which is his name's not in this actual article because this was the original article when he was found, has some issues. You will see in deeper detail if you go click the link and it goes more details for the updates. He's now, because we can do this now that they found him and traced him to this abduction and thought that maybe she was going to be harmed seriously, they're tracing him to two other abductions and two other murders that happened in the near past. We'll see whether he gets pinned for those and what happens, especially with this one. He has some family members that are also attached into this case right here. It's a weird one. It's an odd one. It's something that we're glad that Charlotte Cena, we're so glad the young lady's back. But the backstory, the true crime love that some of us have for these things turns this into a very juicy detail that will be followed for quite some time. It is now time to present the top story of the week, the story you voted in with your engagement as the number one story of the top 10. And we give this a little extra pause so we can give it some fanfare for its ranking. This story is a little silly, but it does go to the fact that we've all had eyeballs on essentially the same story for about 3 weeks. And we should be noticing in just how silly it is. This story had more engagement than the previous story about the saving of Charlotte Cena by 94%, about basically 100% more engagement from that one. From the story at the very bottom, we said number 217, we call that the almost relevant story of the week. It is more engaging by 71,900. So not as crazy as the last couple of weeks has been, but this one still very much more engaging in the story. This story is the top story for both Facebook and for Twitter, so it basically ruled the roost for all of the stories. 8% of all engagement this week went to this story, 8.01 to be exact. What is the headline we're talking about for the number one story of this week? Oh, you know it. You know it. You do know it. The headline reads for number one story, even Travis Kelce thinks the NFL is overdoing it with Taylor Swift coverage. That's a quote from him and a podcast he does with his brother every single week because the Kelce brothers are just a hoot to do. So they do a podcast. They talk about life, talk about their games, talk about their mom a lot in the story. And that's where it came from. Basically talking about their mom, Donna Kelce, hanging out with Taylor Swift and her entourage of very famous people in the last couple of days, and now how they're buddy-buddy. Travis Kelce, who did not confirm whether he is quote-unquote dating Taylor Swift, just hanging out, talking, being friends with, basically said, the NFL's kind of doing a bit too much with this whole thing. The NFL, for its part, said not so much reacting to this particularly, but other things saying they're overdoing it. Basically saying they're not overdoing it. They're happy that Taylor Swift is involved with the NFL, even if it's as a odd girlfriend spectator, and that the attention that she is bringing to the sport is awesome, and they hope to bring some attention to her work as well. I don't think too many 68-year-old burly bar guys are going to Taylor Swift concerts, but once you hear her music, you kind of get sucked in, so you really can't fight it. So don't fight it, just go with it. Taylor Swift is all over the NFL. No word on whether she's going to be in the stands for this weekend's game that Kansas City has going on. Doesn't really matter. We're still following it. Especially the Swifties are loving the fact that now they know that they're football players. And there's a guy named Travis Kelce who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And he catches the ball and runs around stuff, they guess. That's your number one story for the week. Your top 10 stories now listed. Let's go to a quick little shift and talk about the supplemental podcast, this supplemental podcast, and that is Story of the Week. The Story of the Week allows us to talk about one particular story, go deeper in detail on one story from the top 10, which tells us that you really like these stories. So we should do some detail, and it gives me something to really do some bigger digging into. That's a word I had trouble saying today. However, it limits me from trying to go all over the place. So here's the thing for this week. The top story, we find these stories by taking the top 10 stories, moving them out of order, and then going headline by headline, battling them out till we get to the top two stories and one of those wins. The top two stories for this week include the number one story being interviewing Biden, the saddest thing as he couldn't finish his sentences, says ex-ESPN host Sage Steele. That was number 3 this week. And number 4 this week, The runner-up, and Coulter compared Republicans wanting former President Trump back in office to an abused spouse making excuses for their partner in a podcast interview. At this point, I usually say a little bit of why runner-up was important and then go into why I'm talking about the top story. I'm actually talking about both. I'm combining both stories because there's a lot wrapped into this. There's Ann Coulter and Sage Steele as commentators. There's Trump and Biden as really old guys who really shouldn't be running for president. There's actually some Patrick Bet-David and some Bill Maher as contrarian podcasters, if you will, sort of saying what they want to say and getting away with what they want to say because they are who they are, and some accountability actions and some things they do. So it's a whole lot of jumble coming up that combines the two. But for the record, Sage still wins. Her talking about her interview with Joe Biden is the top story that will get the main coverage. But we're going to combine a whole lot in this story of the week this week. We're going to take a quick pause for commercials and some promotions. When we come back, we'll tell you more about the stories that didn't quite make it. Those are the almost rans. Those also good stories, top stories, but not top 10, top 11 through 15. And the very bottom story this week, story number 217, the almost irrelevant story this week. And we go to one that you probably are going to feel the pinch for nationwide eventually in one certain state. Definitely, you'll want to hear about this, even though you didn't want to talk about it this week. This is the weekly wrap-up for the week ending October 7th, 2023. Let's take a moment to talk about Zenni Optical. Zenni Optical are the people who built my glasses here, if you're watching me on the video, and of course have taken care of my glassware and my eyewear needs for the last decade or so. They're taking care of my daughter with her new pairs of glasses, and my wife is, starting to go off the designer kick and going with the designer look that Zenni Optical has, because she, as more than anyone else in this family, is the one that actually watches the money, and she is really, really, really loving the fact that Zenni Optical offers up great lenses, great frames, and all the technology that you need for a lower cost than the other folks. You just get your prescription and put it online. You can set things up. You can click a button and see what they look like on your faces. Get a chance to try them on, online, and then order them for a low cost. And if you don't like them, just send back to one pair. You don't have to spend $100 to send back 5 pairs of glasses and then pay for another pair of glasses. Just buy the pair you want and go with it. These glasses that I'm wearing right now, my brand new glasses, are less than $25 because they have a solid frame. The frame price went up. The lenses have a little bit extra because I have the tint on them, and I have a bit of astigmatism that meant a little bit of adjusting. But I have glasses, simple glasses, nice looking glasses for $25. And because of that, I can buy 2 or 3 pairs. So when I lose one, I can find a spare someplace. That is why I go with Zenni Optical. They also have my sunglasses, my true sunglasses I wear in the sun, those as well, and my sports glasses are in my sports bag as well. Whatever you're looking for, blue blocker technology, transitions technology, they have them, and they'll take care of you with a great price. Men, women, and children, great glasses, great price, Zenni Optical. How do you get it? Use our affiliate link so we get a little bit of help from helping you out. It is theconversationproject.com/Zenni. This is theconversationproject.com/Zenni, Zenni for Zenni Optical. Check them out. You will fall in love with yourself, your new glasses, and Zenni Optical today. The Conversation Project lives at theconversationproject.com. This is the home for everything we do. Daily, 5 days a week, every single weekday morning at 5:50 a.m., I'm up giving you a news headline for the morning, which stretches out the day. That's called Things You Might Have Heard. For Monday, we'll give you the full weekend. So the stories that we're covering right now, as I'm recording this, being posted online, you will see them come up. I am more than positive as I'm recording this live. We'll be talking about Hamas attacking Israel and other things on that level for Monday. Tuesday through Friday, it's the previous days. And what do you do to get there? Well, how do we make that happen? You follow us on our feeds on Facebook and Twitter. Go to facebook.com/This Is the Conversation Project, and for Twitter and X, it is th_conversation. When you follow us there, you just have to engage in the stories you see online. Like them, love them, hate them, share them. The more engagement they get, the better chance we have of talking about them daily and at the end of the week right here. As we said here, there's a story that didn't get any love. We get talking about because no one talked about it, and all the stories you talked about, you loved, we're giving you as well. We also ask you to go to our email, or your email us at the conversation inbox at gmail.com. Check that out. And you can also visit our partnerships page at our website and see if there's ways that we can work together to do better work for the Conversation Project. We're trying our best to improve some things. There's some look things improving. There's some sound and some motion things happening. There's some internal things you're seeing inside as we produce the show to make it more pithy, more tight, and of course, more relevant. And we're getting that from your engagement, your actual responses, what you're telling us in the replies and emails, and our partners essentially, they're essentially poking the buttons to say what happened. So they get first dibs at what is going on. If you want to help us out with that, anything is great. What you want to offer up is well accepted. We think you advance. The biggest things we need are following us in the feeds and, of course, emailing us with your conversational projects. So thank you for all of that in advance. Now, let's get back to the news stories here. We're getting to the almost rans. These are stories that were not quite top 10 material, literally 11 through 15, with a little bit of perspective on them. Not as much as the other stories, because they didn't get the love that they should have got, or they get the love that they would have got. But we're going to give you some insights and perspective on the stories that were almost there, and maybe why they didn't make it quite into the top ranks. This first story, the number 11, is an interesting one that got a lot of love from you guys in the actual workings, and we did talk about this one in things you might have heard, but just barely missed the top 10. Tom Hanks warns fans about AI version of me promoting a dental plan. Tom Hanks shared a picture on the social media of a AI image that was speaking in the words of Tom Hanks, but was not speaking the words from Tom Hanks, essentially trying to sell a dental plan from some offshoot insurance folks who were very much shady and didn't need to be dealt with. In fact, those people were caught and they were prosecuted from that promotional video, which was an AI representation of Tom Hanks saying, go with these folks. Now, there are many people online who are doing what they can to make a little extra money and promoting things in these types of ads, promoting these sort of smaller type of venue things. And Tom Hanks is no exception, except for the fact that this one isn't him. So remember, seeing someone's likeness, seeing a picture of someone endorsing it, and seeing all these little logos, has seen on blah, 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 does not mean those things are true and doesn't mean they're any good. So make sure you are doing your due diligence and do with that. This week we dealt with 3 specific, really sort of well done phishing schemes at my job this week that we had to address because they were very well done. Luckily, my people are very good at seeing these things and understanding it, but having to explain it is something that's also going there. So beware of deep fakes, beware of phishing attacks, be wary of all those internet stuff out there. Last weekend, as we were wrapping up the work for this thing here, getting together, I was listening to the news and hearing about this race being canceled. The Twin Cities Marathon canceled due to hot weather conditions. Literally hours before it was going to run, they killed this track meet, this race in the Twin Cities. And it was because it was going to be about 95 degrees on the day, and running at the beginning of October in 95-degree weather is not the most ideal thing. Now, many runners like, dude, I can hack this. But for their own safety, they essentially killed both the marathon and the 10-mile race on the day. It's going to be rescheduled fairly soon, so it'll pop up again. But late climate change, and late hot weather, as we've done the last 4 months, have essentially been the last highest recorded weathers for these months in history. October, no exception. November, or October's early, but right now it's still pretty warm, although the cool weather is coming. We'll see how these things play out going forward. Tom Brady's Raiders ownership stake stalled over discount price he was given. Be careful of the deals you're being given, because Tom Brady got a sweetheart deal to take a stake in the Raiders, but right now the NFL is looking over to make sure it's not too much of a deal, too good of a deal, not unfair to other people in the league. Now, granted, him being a prime person to have be a name on your franchise tags and to be there to help things out is a good reason to give him a bit of a deal, but not too much of a deal. We'll see while this plays out. Chances are they'll figure it out because he's Tom Brady and the Raiders, and they both make money. We'll see how long it takes to go there. I finally got a chance to share this Arkansas story with the world, and you guys responded with it well. This is at number 14. A lot of talk about it. We did have some talk in the daily things you might have heard, but it only got to top 15 for the weekend. The headline reads, Whistleblower says Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders' office illegally altered withheld records related to $20,000 podium. Now, number one, the podium's not worth $20,000. The podium is what you stand on. It's actually a lectern. So there's that. I've heard that many times in the past month. But a local blogger who works as sort of a teller of truth for both sides of the aisle, making sure that both sides in the Arkansas House and Senate are doing what they need to do, and just in all branches of government, put out a Freedom of Information request for some travel things that Sarah Huckabee Sanders was doing because it looked sort of shady. Her response was to call a special session to basically try to kill Freedom of Information Acts, or at least, and it turned out alternate way they could be done. What this turned into was, did she take state police with her to France on a trip that's normally a simple trip? Why she took so much security? Was it security because she was basically having the state pay for her trip to Euro Disney with her kids? And this podium, which was ordered before the end of a fiscal year so that money could be put on the books for the company, which didn't get delivered till maybe a couple of weeks ago because no one's actually seen the podium. Go check the link out. Look at the story. This thing is huge, huger than you think of what's going on. And it goes to tell you how, if you're not paying attention, what's going on behind you on your back and what else may be going on behind your back if this is stuff that we're actually finding. And number 15, a very sad story to give you. 5 people wounded in a shooting after a homecoming event at Morgan State University in Baltimore. This is one you basically need to go back and read up on. This is a repeat offense, if you will, as last year's homecoming was marred by a shooting event as well. This is not a trend that they're really enjoying at Morgan State. In fact, they are, as you would think, trying to basically downplay these people who are doing this stuff because they're a fine university and want to move on with their education standards and what they're doing for the community, not these not so random things. Although a random beef between two groups is essentially where the actual fight came into. Happened during the coronation of Mr. and Miss Morgan State during a ceremony that's a part of homecoming. They're not happy about it. Students aren't thrilled about it. The entire state is not really thrilled with the fact that this keeps happening. And so there'll be more coverage of these things going forward, obviously. You can read the story and get more details of all the work that went into covering this and how they're doing to eliminate this in the future. Now, before we go to the almost relevant story of the week, let's remind you that the Conversation Project lives at theconversationproject.com, our online home where you can find more about us, what we do, the sponsors, the partnerships page, all that stuff. Email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Tell us what we can do better or not as worse, and we will do what we can to live up to those suggestions and standards. Find us online to tell us what to talk about. The feeds are on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/This is Conversation Project and Twitter.com/th_conversation. Check those out. We thank you in advance for all you do to tell us what's going on and just for being you. Now, here's a story that no one seemed to care about. You're probably going to care more once I tell you what it is. It is story 217. As I told you, it was about 71% less engaging than the top story this week. Travis Kelce saying that the Taylor Swift thing's a bit overdone. Your headline for 217 reads, New California law raises minimum wage for fast food workers to $20 per hour, among the nation's highest. Now, $20 an hour is not the highest, so there you go, but it's pretty gosh darn good for fast food workers. Fast food workers in the state, the California Golden State, now will receive, or fairly soon, once it clocks in is ratified and put into place, $20 an hour for working fast food. Is this a bad thing? Not really, because fast food workers are hard workers. There's a lot of people going to that, and people are using those jobs as full-time, their main jobs, even though you would suspect this is a job for teenagers and part-time workers. People are basically not being able to live off a living wage, so they're paying fast food workers more money. Many people think that's great. Many people also think that's not so great because, economies say that you raise the what you pay for people, and to pay for that, you raise the prices of your product. So your fast food burgers and chicken tenders will probably go up a little more, which may happen. What it does do in the overall run of things is make everybody a little bit better. We are going to pay more money for the food anyway, and the people working there need more pay to go through anyway. This is my thought process. I am a deeply held conservative and a deep held person who deals in capitalism and understand how it works. So understanding what's going to happen here is you hire people for $20 an hour, you hire better people. You can fire the people who aren't living up to standards much easier because people will come in for $20 an hour work and will work harder for that food. Hence, you may raise the prices of the food coming forward, and that may happen, but you'll get better service from better people in the process. And the margins in the food is so small anyway, and the food is so cheap to produce anyway, you won't notice it because we haven't noticed it so far. It may be a creeping slowly going forward, but they're not going to double the Whopper price tomorrow. That's not happening. They're going to tighten the margins for a bit till this thing works out and find other ways to make things work out. They may actually pay some of their executives a little bit less in the scale of their growing salaries, and not to give such a big bonus to the bosses and use that bonus to fund these folks going forward. They can do that. It's possible. They just have to have the will to do that. Now, you may think this is ridiculous because fast food workers are just, slubs off the street, slapping meat and bread and handing to you. And you're feel free to think that. You're free to believe that. And feel free to have that conversation with me in email and in responses to the video or the audio podcast, or just in reply back to the email you get if you're getting the newsletter as well. We are here to talk, and that's what we're here to do. With that said, we've released to you all the news articles we are obligated to do. We gave you the top 10 stories. There, we gave you the almost rans at 11:15. I just gave you the almost relevant story of the week and told you why it probably should be relevant. And we sold some ads and promoted ourselves. With that, we are done for the week for the weekly wrap up. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. One more time, go to our website, thisisaconversationproject.com, and find all details you need for us, from us to you, and make sure you're staying limber, staying hydrated, and staying on task for all the grand things you are here for to do for all of us out here. We're going to wrap this up in seconds because we're done for the recording. We're going to see you come Monday on the things you might have heard for the weekend's big replays of shows. We're going to see you later on in the weekend for the story of the week. That will produce that about an hour or so after this comes down. You'll see that in a separate feed, so look for it. And we're going to see you all day, all night on the feed. So stick around for all that stuff. Tell us what to talk about for the Conversation Project. Thank you.